Welcome back. I'm starting to feel quite lonely. I hope you all had some wonderful discussion, and once everybody has returned, we'll have a little debrief. Okay, great. Let me get myself ready here to take some notes. Wonderful. Well, let's start with we could start with group. How about group 4? Start at the end. Would you like to share some highlights of your discussion?
Was I group 4? I'm sorry.
I think so.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No.
I forgot.
All right.
Okay. So we came up with some great solutions for my own site. So I just want to thank everybody who was in my group. Jade and I are really excited. But so for the first one being, how have you been struggling? We've heard this many times, and I think many have. The screen timed out. Families are just timed out. Staff are timed out. We're just screened out. We just, oh my gosh, another meeting. Great. Also staff, though, we did talk a little bit about staff struggling to also become wide open and be part of virtual. It's not all about just the families, but the staff themselves. They get new expectations for them, for those who maybe aren't ready to just be on live and let everyone see them. And the struggles with the digital, we talked about the data, access to the broadband, all of those things, but definitely families who have to use their data every time they use a phone system. And with severe lockdown, there was an opportunity to loan items and all of those, but none of that's happening. And one of the big struggles too now was with newer restrictions, there was kits being delivered, but now we are no longer able to, so even more further restrictions with what we can do with programming. Did you want me to do all of them or just the first question?
I'm sure all the highlights that you have to share.
Okay. And then what have you tried? So many of the programs have tried the kits, loaning out computers. One thing that's really is how to get families to buy in. So there's been a lot of having participants participate. Some called it a contest of prize, but there was a discussion about how we have to be careful of how we're wording that. So maybe, instead of it's a contest or a prize, because that entails maybe we're picking favorites. We want to be careful of that. We don't want to say your photograph was better than someone else's. So we want to make sure that's not implied in any way. So just rewording some of those. Show us how you enjoyed the day today. It might be a good way, and just have them show pictures and what else? A loaning computer equipment so that they have access to it might be a new thing. And then one fantastic idea, which we hadn't really thought about, is just having a parent drop-in. So like you would do, instead of an individual programming, so prenatal program, this program, just a drop-in. So you're open from 1 to 3. Families just come to say hi. What someone called it is make it about them. And I really like that. Not our agenda as staff or agencies, but make it about them. Maybe they just want to talk to you. Maybe they just want to say hello. But so every Tuesday from 1 to 3, it's a drop-in. So a virtual drop-in.
Yeah, a virtual drop-in through Zoom. Through some kind of a Zoom or live,
yeah. So I thought we have not tried that. So that's something that we're certainly going to talk about. And then evening programming. We talked about what we've learned is not all times work best for families. So varying your programming. So one of the best times is maybe in the evening for some programming, especially the older children could join in if they wish to, because it's hard to have programming going on in one computer, class on another for another family member, and then maybe somebody working from home. That's a lot to ask, and plus on your data. So anything I missed, group 4? I just left really excited because we're going to try some of these things. So.
Oh, awesome. I'd like to hear that.
We did talk about how bribes work.
Oh.
How bribes work?
Rick, explain yourself.
Incentives, offering people incentives so that they come to the program. Okay. It's actually incentives.
Yes. And another thing, and I'm sorry, this is when our Facebook page gets lost, overdrawn. We're an agency that has over 40 different staff in it. So we can make options on your Facebook to just have groups. So we need to do that. So a lot of agencies have their own Facebook, but we do not. So it would be nice for families because they're also just spending almost half an hour. Our own staff cannot find their postings. So that's also time consuming as well. So how do we better post our items on Facebook? So I was excited about that as well.
I think I understand what, so if I'm hearing you correctly, one of the challenges is posts get lost on a Facebook page. So you're making better use of groups.
Yeah, so you can actually group it. So we could just say early on or cap C or whatever, and they can go right to that as opposed to, I mean, there's advantages having it on our website as well, because then they see all our postings, but sometimes you don't have time to do that. And then, so just a grouping for individual programming. Gotcha. So, because we could have up to 25 posts a day on our Facebook. So if a family's going back in a week to look for something, they will never find it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just to clarify, the groups are still within your Facebook page. So they would still go to your Facebook page. It's just there's an option to create groups within your Facebook page. So when they log onto your page, they just hit groups, and then you can create however many groups you'd like, and post content within those groups.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I didn't know that. Anything else, anyone? We were flowing, Sydney. It was exciting.
That is great. Wonderful to hear. I know there's lots of interest in sort of navigating Facebook and groups, and it sounds like maybe it's time to try to come together again to do some learning about how to set these things up. So if anybody feels particularly competent around that and has ideas, please let me know, because I'd love to work with somebody to offer a Facebook tutorial. So just putting that out there. Thanks, Rhonda. How about group 3?
Okay, that was our group.
Hey, Kim.
Help me out if I don't get this all straight. We had a number of success stories that we shared. One shared by Rachel. They do welcome calls to all participants, but they went back for a 2-year period and reconnected with families. And that was around Christmas time, so they were able to also provide them with a Christmas dinner. But they recruited new families by doing that, and they're planning on actually doing that again. So I thought that was pretty neat.
Sorry, Kim. So could you say, so they're welcome calls, but they were connecting with families that they've connected with before? I didn't quite follow.
Yeah. Rachel, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, so what we wanted to reconnect with families that we knew that they were needing our services. We knew they would benefit from our service. A lot of families stopped coming with the first lockdown, but instead of just limiting ourselves from like 1 year membership, we went back 2 years to reconnect with families. So during the conversation, some families, we couldn't reach out to them because their phone number has changed. If their phone number wasn't available, we tried Messenger. So we were successful in recruiting 9 families to our program, and they all received a turkey dinner. So the next step was to do another wellness call to those who received their turkey dinner to see how that worked out with them and have a conversation.
Oh, you called them wellness calls.
Well, yeah, wellness or welcome, it both of like it's
Both.
yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Thanks for sharing a bit more about that.
Great idea.
Mm-hmm.
We had another great idea. Ellen from the Windsor area, who's with the CPNP program, they were really struggling to get new clients. So they approached their local health unit, and the health unit's marketing people really helped them to do a major marketing campaign through Facebook. And that was very successful for them. They were able to reach a lot of new moms.
Excellent.
Or moms to be. Yeah. And then we had many conversations around using or capitalizing on existing partnerships. And one of those partnerships was with the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program, getting referrals to your programs out through that, through local churches, and a food and toy drive, connecting with families that had joined that program. And we did talk about the incentives as well. Yeah, the weekly prizes, that was the initial way of getting participants to join into our virtual groups. And then after joining, they enjoyed the programs and stayed on. There was also success around social media, and this was already spoken about as well, regarding the Facebook Messenger groups. That I think it was Melissa from Building Healthy Babies, where you were speaking to this regarding that the members, once they became part of that group, they were supporting each other in that group and having great conversations, and that became another way of reaching people, just a different method. And there was just a few concerns. I mean, some of the issues we spoke about have already been noted. Again, like the burnout, the virtual burnout. But and then there was a question brought up about recording versus non-recording, being live, the success rates, which with each of those, we kind of just chatted about that for a bit. And then sometimes it was, again, the comfort level of our staff, maybe not there yet for the live programming. And then also during those virtual groups, losing participants while the group is going on because you're at home and your other children are needing your care, your baby's crying. And so that made it a little more difficult to be on those virtual groups. But in saying all of that, there was a success story that I think needed to be recognized, in that all of our social media skills have increased. So,
what was that?
All of our social media skills have really increased. We've learned a thing or two. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Is there anything else that I should add for those that were in the group? Did I miss anything? Okay, say two.
Thank you. That was great. Lots of really interesting and innovative ideas, and yes, things that we need to consider. And one thing I hadn't considered was how much easier it would be for a participant in logging in from home to be pulled away from the group, right? Somebody has a need and they're right there, so they get pulled out of group for sure. So let's move on to group 2, and I think Colleen, were you attached to this group?
Yvette and I were both part of that group.
Okay. And you
I can share, and then Yvette, will you jump in after? So we had a group of 4, so we were a smaller group, and the challenges around staffing were different. All 4 of us. In fact, I don't think Monica had any staffing challenges. She's downtown Toronto, and the other 3, we were all in Northern Ontario. But one of the challenge was just nothing to do with COVID, but how many of our projects working in isolation. you know, and that can be compounded by COVID, sure, perhaps doing the job of 2 positions, trying to fill a position. Talked about in many small communities, you have few suitable candidates. So you're really competing with other community agencies and the school board to fill any vacancies. And then we talked about the current reality of COVID. How do you orientate? How do you train someone right now if they're working? Am I on the right track here?
I'm sorry, I don't know for others, but your first point got lost just with garbled transmission. So
let me turn off my video. Maybe I'm getting unstable.
Sure.
My first.
Okay.
The first point was just of a project, a couple of projects actually working in isolation.
Oh, many projects are working in isolation.
Oh. Yeah, one staff person.
Okay. And then
and doing the job of 2 positions.
Okay.
The challenges of filling a position.
Okay, thank you.
And then I spoke about the small communities competing for candidates.
Thank you.
And then we also, the comment was brought forward, you know, are people wanting to start a new job during COVID? That fear, and what does that entail? You need to have a COVID test. What is required to begin a new position? One of the points that is reflective of our organization is we had people leave, and we decided not to fill those positions at this time in light of COVID. So we have less staff working more hours, which staff wanted, but we'll see the impact of that, because the reality is then if someone's off, you don't have that fill in. You don't have anyone to fill in. Yvette, did you have other points? You're on mute, Yvette.
I just want to support Colleen's point of staff shuffle, in that people who were near retirement retired, and that left more work for those that were left behind. And sometimes that was a good thing, and sometimes it wasn't a good thing. Mm-hmm. I know for myself in COVID times, I worked all sorts of hours. I could 10 o'clock, I can still be on a Zoom doing some training for new parents that have just come forward with a child with FASD. We also were thinking, I think it's a part of COVID, is that we have to think outside the box. So maybe before we didn't have outdoor activity, now we do. Everybody's using their creative brains to come up with ways of engaging our different families or clients, such as bagged projects, certainly trying to teach people to use Zoom and other things. So those were just some of the things that I put down in addition to what Colleen's covered most of my lists here. But some games online, win it, minute to win it. I don't know the game, but they're starting that as a game for their families. So they're trying to engage people. There was a really good one that came out, Nature Talk, looking at tracks and things like that. Those are all things that we've created because of COVID, and I think it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, group 2, and Colleen and Yvette for sharing highlights of your discussion. And we have one more that was group 1. And I believe the focus of your conversation was on sort of the budget challenges that we're navigating.
Yeah, so in our group we had, most of us are having the unique challenge of having money to spend. We only had one person in the group who has, their agency's been deemed an essential service, so they've been operating as usual. And so their challenges are the same challenges we had before with your, increased cost of rent and things like that. But for the most part, we found we were all in an unusual situation, because we usually you're spending, you're limiting your spending, and then if you, in the fourth quarter, you see you have a little bit extra, then you might, get out your wish list and look for things you can add to your program. So we talked about some of that being a challenge in that, we're having to spend money on different things, like, for example, going out and purchasing food to distribute, or supplies for kits to distribute, and just the whole challenge around making that, taking the time to do that with everything else that you have to do. And then we talked about how food has been really, for all of us, the major issue for our clients, and we've all had to get creative about how to get food out to people. And we also were spending money on things like kits to send out to family, incentives and prizes and things to use in programs. One project is purchasing more items to provide layettes for their prenatal program. So they're using funds to buy large diaper bags that they can put everything in. In Nettie's case, she talked about how there are a lot of families that don't know how to use the technology. So they're thinking about spending some money to perhaps purchase tablets that they can use when they're back face to face. And just other, we talked about other items that we're purchasing, like books for families. Everybody's purchasing grocery cards. And I think that's about it. One other, a lot of us had services that were being provided by community partners that, like, for example, the health department, and some of those things aren't available to us right now. So one of the things that we have now had to include in our budget is funds to pay for interpreters to interpret the online programs. And I think that's all I have. Nettie, did I capture everything? Do you think? Anybody else?
I think you captured the bulk of it. Thank you.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, we could have talked for longer, like everyone else, I'm sure. But Colleen, did you have a question?
Well, not a question, but a comment, because I wanted to be in that group as well, because that is our reality, and just the reality too, that it's sometimes hard to acquire goods. It's not that easy when you live in Northwestern Ontario and shop locally and all of that. But we had a conversation with our PC and our grants and contributions officer. And this, just so everyone's aware, for any of those managers, this would be the time when you think about putting in a request if you want to do a budget transfer.
Right. Yeah, we did talk about that.
Okay.
I asked if anybody had tried to do that yet, and the response was that Health Canada had been, very very accommodating around that, and the situation being what it is, there's not a lot we can do about that, and to best serve families, it's something we're going to have to do.
Yeah, and for us, it directly related to the staffing issue. We have a underspent in our personnel line, so that is something that sounded like promising they would allow us to transfer that, which I think maybe sometimes in the past it was less rigid or more rigid. So that's, that's very positive.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. That's really important, sort of sharing and information. And it's just really interesting, the things that, you know, we're needing to kind of wrap our brains around and muddle through. And so I'm hoping that, you know, having this time to come together and share some of these experiences and ideas with other CAPC and CPNP staff has been helpful to you. So we are now at kind of the end of our time together. So unless, I guess, just want to check in to see if anybody has any final thoughts or questions or concerns before we wrap up.
It always, I think, I don't know about anybody else, but quite often and lately or in these times, we feel like we're working like in a vacuum and ones and whatever. And when you come to one of these, or a coordinating committee meeting, or a zone meeting even, and you start chit-chatting with everybody, like we're spread out all over the province, and a lot of the issues and stuff that each place is dealing with, we're all dealing with it across the board, and we're not by ourselves. That's why these meetings are good, because it shows that you're not by yourself.
Awesome. Okay, that's good to hear. Because I guess that's sort of the next check-in, like is do we see value in thinking about continuing to come together in, say, another month or two? So I guess if anybody has any thoughts on that, we'd like to hear it, and then we can make our plans accordingly. So what do you think? Should we think about coming together again in? I guess we've been doing this, what, generally every couple of months?
I don't know about the timing, Sydney, but I think that if, you know, when we approach our next phase of whatever, whether that be further restrictions,
yeah,
or reopening in some ways,
okay,
at that point in time, there'd certainly be value in everybody getting together, because, you know, everybody has to scramble to make changes.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say, Ruthann, is that perhaps we can't put a sort of a predetermined time, but instead let's just keep our eye on the landscape and the next sort of big shift that happens, whether new changes in restrictions or changes in programming, that might be a good time. That's what I heard. Okay.
I think that's what I'm thinking.
Yvette, I thought I saw you wiggle a finger. And you're muted.
Okay, so my brain is waving, but not on obviously not enough to mute myself. But I wonder, we have a conference coming up at the end of February, and a real highlight attending the Nexus conference last year, which some of us did, was a get-together we had in the evening. So how about, this is just throwing it out there, if our conference is on the 25th and the 26th, maybe in one of those evenings at 7 o'clock, we could meet for coffee and then just kind of have a get together and check in and just say, hey, how's it going and what are you doing? Tie it in with the conference. So it wouldn't have to be a formal thing like this, but it would be an opportunity to connect and say, hey, we know you're there. Just
what do other people think? Would you come to a sort of an evening informal connection, perhaps likely the Thursday evening, I would think.
I like the informal idea.
I can attest that last year was wonderful. It was so nice, and we got some appetizers. It was delicious. It was so much fun.
I was going to ask, can we have sushi again?
Right?
Virtual sushi.
Well, actually, I'm wondering, can't you just send it out to each one of our sites?
Blanca, are you still here?
Door-to-door delivery. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Thanks, Yvette. And your timing is good, because I was just about ready to launch the schedule for the conference. So we'll take that back to the coordinating committee, and but yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Who's going to put in the large skip the dishes order?
Skip the dishes is my new favorite thing. Well, I want to just respect your time because it's getting to be 4:05, and I want to let you know, I mean, I've taken a few notes, and we are recording this. We recorded our large group discussions here. So if you do want to kind of look back or listen again to some of our conversation, I'll make this available on the newsletter and WebConnect. So you can read that over. And I think somebody put in the chat too that they were they thought considering coming together in, I think Dawn here suggested in about 3 months could be good. So yeah, we'll keep that in mind. Sort of Ruth Ann's suggestion of the changing landscape, and like I think if it gets to be you know, more than a couple of months, it might be good just to come together and check in any case. So I want to thank you all for coming. I do really enjoy these opportunities to connect and to see your faces and hear your voices. And I want to thank, let's see, I think Rachel and Ruth Ann and Kim and Colleen and, oh my goodness, somebody else. My brain does turn off at this time of day, but those who helped. Yvette, yes. For taking notes in the small groups and reporting back. That was really helpful. So with that, I'd like to wish you all a lovely evening and a lovely rest of the week. And hopefully some of you have been able to take in the opportunity for the self-care workshops on Friday. I'm really looking forward to that. And so maybe I'll see some of you there. So take care, and we will talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.